Okay, workshop 7. The chapter this week is around the construction of wills and looks at the rules, or at least the guidelines we use to interpret the text of wills. You'll find a lot of this material is familiar because there's a lot of overlap here between the rules of construction of wills and general legal interpretation. In fact, you'll find some of the rules of statutory interpretation reappear here. What you also will hopefully be starting to get a feel for is the fact that when looking over multiple law subjects, you will find that the same sorts of ideas and the same sorts of principles arrive. So that when you come to a new area of law, you probably will find that you can start anticipating and guessing some of the things that the law does. I mean, you always have to keep an eye out for the weird and strange and unusual, and there's always those things there. But you'll find there's general ideas about what discretion is and how discretion's exercised and how things are stated, and how the rules or how the words of a provision are interpreted that do tend to be the same from area to area of law. And as you continue with your studies, as you progress, you start joining those dots and those things will start making more sense. So okay, chapter 8 of the book. Was there anything tricky in there? Hopefully not too badly. I'm going to have a quick flip through here to see if there's anything I needed to point out. One of the things that's interesting about this chapter is there's all sorts of little individual principles and overall guidelines. So there's individual principles in terms of the language that's used, and one of those I think that's worth looking at is that individual or cultural dictionaries are able to be used. That means that if a person tends to refer to something in a certain way or use certain words, or they're part of a community or culture that do that, we can look at those and we can bring in extrinsic evidence to examine that. So that's of particular relevance, I think, to your assignment or to some of your assignments this term. So I don't think there's anything too difficult in there. A lot of common law rules around ambiguity. As we all know from previous weeks, there are also considerable statutory powers to fix ambiguity as well, so that even if you don't, these rules don't get you to a clear answer, courts now have additional powers to try and provide to come up with that answer on their own if it's not available on interpretation of the text itself. Let me quickly look. Where this becomes particularly relevant to us, again, I guess, is the workshop this week. And the workshop this week, we're looking at ambiguity. And the best way to talk about it, to discuss ambiguity, is in terms of the cases and the principles that are laid down here. So moving on to the workshop itself, I've asked you to have as homework to think about things that are ambiguous. What we will do in the workshop is try and come up with a bit of a mind map of having a look at what sorts of ambiguities are relevant, and hopefully this will give us some more concrete context of all the legislation that we've looked at in previous weeks, where we're continually told if it's ambiguous, do this, do that. Well, how can it be ambiguous? What are the situations in which there's ambiguity? So have a look at the cases this week, have a look at those as examples. Some of them are quite strange and far-fetched. People who have two sons called John and they leave money to John, I mean, that's not going to happen now. But use a bit of interpretation and think about, well, where are the situations where those sort of circumstances may actually arise now? Okay, I'll see you in the workshops.